Brett, I think we can, wait a couple of minutes for people to attend. Maybe about 30 more seconds. How do you feel about that?
That sounds good. I have a joke for you while we're here.
Okay.
It's actually a two-part joke.
All right.
Okay. So the first part of the joke is it's what's black and white and red all over.
Okay. I've heard many of these when I was younger, but I'm gonna go with it. And I guess a newspaper or something like that, or I'm gonna say I'm not sure what black and white.
I'm in an embarrassed penguin. Okay.
Embarrassed.
So that's second part. Second part. What's black and white and unread all over?
Not an embarrassed penguin. I have no idea.
Most user feedback.
Oh my gosh! Ouch! Ouch! And it's not red. All right. Well, it looks like we've got a number of people joining us. That's a great way to kick it off. But no, thanks. So welcome everybody to the Art of Harassing User Feedback. I'm Eric Ashby, head of product at Helpshift, and I'll let Brett introduce himself, and then we'll kick off this this chat that we're having today.
I'm Brett Kaplan. I'm a product manager at UniQ.
Excellent. So we're going to be talking about the art of harnessing user feedback. This is really an open dialogue. If you have any questions or would like to direct the conversation, just please post it in the chat or in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that throughout the the session here, and then of course we'll probably be reposting this and sharing this afterwards. But just a little story, Brett, before we start, a little bit about my history. I've actually been in the industry for quite some time. For I don't know, 20, 30 years. And I worked for a company up at in Redmond called Microsoft, and I worked on this product called Outlook for many years. And it used to be that whenever I'd fly around, I would get on a plane, and I'd sit down next to somebody, and they would ask me, what do I do? And I tell them I work for Microsoft, and they'd say, okay, well, that's interesting. And what group do you work for? And I said Outlook. Now if you know any, if you've been in the industry for any time, Outlook is kind of their email product. And as I knew it happened every time. As soon as I said Outlook, I was like, all right, here it comes. And they would go, oh, you work for Outlook. I have some things, to say. And I would proceed to get this unsolicited user feedback that I would get for, just during the time that I was there. And, and the time at that point was the development was very different. In fact, we had our development cycles were gated on months and even years at times. And so, getting user feedback was very ad hoc, and and it was like sitting next to somebody. And I had always wondered, as I was getting this, I was like, gee, there's got to be a better way than me getting on airplanes and getting this, sitting next to people. There's got to be just a better way for feedback. And so this is a session that I'm very, very passionate about. So I know we have a set of kind of pre set up questions that we're going to ask, but again, like I said, I'll open it up to anybody if they have. And why don't we just kick it off? Brett, we'll kind of go through some of the questions, but I think maybe one of the things that I would ask is, what feedback we know is critical to product and engineering teams, but what, in your mind, what's the nature of feedback, and why does feedback really matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just by way of background for folks that aren't familiar with what UniQ is, UniQ is a platform that helps companies understand their customers in real time. We do that by providing insights from user feedback. And the way I think about it is that at the end of the day, there's only one group of people that can tell you how successful you are at delivering amazing experiences. You can try your own product as much as you'd like, but at the end of the day, only your customers can tell you with certainty whether you're delivering an amazing experience. And feedback is the way to understand that from your customers, whether you're on a plane, a train, an automobile, or on the internet. Users are going to tell you what they think. And so it's not about whether your users are going to give you feedback. It's about whether you can listen to it and whether you can harness it.
Yeah, and I think that's that's something that I think has really changed in the industry. Like it used to be
Mhm.
if we wanted to get feedback, like we'd actually go out and go hire somebody to go capture feedback and go do these surveys and all of that. The reality is that you're going to get feedback. You're going to get it now.
Absolutely.
It's going to come out. Consumers have so many options to give you feedback. Really, the question is, in my mind, two things. One is, are you going to manage that feedback? Are you going to control the way that they're going to give you that feedback, or is it going to be something very public or out there for everybody to see, or things like that? Are you going to drive the narrative? And then what are you going to do with that feedback? Are you going to actually harness it and do something with it and make the value of it? But it's not whether or not you're going to get it, because you will get it. It's really more of what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to manage it, which is very different. And of course, it's now at the speed of now, just
Mhm.
because it comes in all the time. What are you going to do about it? So.
Yeah, 100%. And change is an absolute constant in the world today. And so you have to be able to evolve to those changes, whether it's economic changes that are changing your users' preferences, or all of a sudden there's just a change to the types of user interfaces
Yeah.
that people like.
Yeah.
And they expect things to feel modern and sleek. And feedback is really the one true golden way that you can keep your finger on the pulse of whether what you're building is working and doing
Yeah.
what you want it to do.
And one of the things that's interesting about kind of in the nature that we're in right now, and everything's public. Everything is everything happens out in the open. And so what happens is that if you don't have a channel, or not thinking about feedback or directing it or whatever,
Mhm.
it's going to come out in the public. The community is going to build that narrative. They're going to basically tell the world what they want to say about about your product, versus you
Mhm.
actually doing it. And that's where it becomes super important to be able to have pass places, things where you can control, where you can manage that feedback. And of course, one of the, let me just tell just a little bit about HelpShift. We provide in-app customer service. It's what we've done for many years. We're on over 2 billion devices, and it's a very natural place to to capture feedback is when someone's when people are looking for support. They're in an app, they're looking for help, and that's a really great place to capture that feedback. And so what we're finding this is a really unique channel to actually leverage for feedback. In fact, one of the questions I have for you, because I know that at UnitQ you actually monitor different channels for feedback. You take a look at some of the public things like that. But from support tickets, that are related to, say, maybe customer feedback or bugs or whatever, what would you say is the percentage of feedback that you actually get
Mhm.
that comes through, say, support versus some other places like the store reviews or the forums or the post or things
Mhm.
like that?
It's a great question. So it can depend a lot on the type of business, but in general, overwhelmingly, feedback is captured in support tools, either through conversations with support agents or via surveys. And one of the reasons we see that there are spikes in people complaining on public sources, whether it's in a Discord channel, which we monitor, on Facebook, on Twitter, is that people didn't feel like they had an opportunity to be heard on those support channels. They didn't get their question answered, or there wasn't a mechanism for them to actually provide the honest feedback that they wanted. And so they turn to those public channels to essentially put those companies on blast, which is what I love about what HelpShift is doing with in-app feedback, is that you're providing companies with a way to manage that entire flow and make sure that users feel heard before they feel like it's necessary to tell all their Facebook friends that they had a poor experience with a company's product.
Yeah. Brett, on that, let's just talk about in-app feedback for just a couple of minutes, because I know we brought it up a little bit, and what is in-app feedback as compared to kind of the other feedback mechanisms. When you think about feedback, you've got App Store reviews, you have maybe a community forum where people can go in and talk about that, but in-app is a little bit unique in that it allows you to kind of capture the feedback at the moment of need, like when the person's actually having the problem, or when they actually have feedback, even if it's positive feedback. And let me just share my screen here just real quickly. I'm not going to get too much. I'm not going to actually do a demo here, but I just wanted to give an example. I was actually had a little bit of time this morning, so I was playing a little game. So hopefully you can see my phone. This is my iPhone that you're seeing here. So let me see, what was the game I was playing? Oh, I remember, it was Golf Clash. Yeah, this is actually done by Playdemic, which is a really interesting, it's a fun game, if you like to golf and kind of challenge other people to it. But I really like what they've done is you can see, like, so as you're playing the game, right up here in the corner, up at the top right hand, is a little question mark and you've got the little chat with us, and you go into it. Now, of course, whenever you provide feedback, you always want to also provide FAQs and things like that, so that if it's a common question that you already know about, you can even have a announcement like check out the known issues or things like that, because it might be something that you already know about. But if you just click on the little chat right there, right at the very beginning, they have report a problem. You can see it's just right there, so that you can quickly go in and just report a problem, whether it's a game crash, game crash, or a bug report or whatever. They can just pick that up, or they even have feedback and suggestions. So literally within 1 to 2 seconds, I didn't go to a website, I didn't go to a community forum where I can see like what everybody else is doing, or I didn't post it publicly. It's like right here within the game or within the app. And what's really powerful about this is that when they get this, you get all of the metadata that's associated with it. They know what my level was, they know who I am, what phone I was on, where I happened to be in it. Imagine that if it was a banking app, they could tell like, hey, wait, I'm getting this feedback from one of our top accounts, or somebody who is trying to do this type of action. You get so much more information, so you're not just shooting in the dark about like, oh, okay, this is just some random feedback. I can actually see this. And then of course you could do trending and things like that. And I think that's where it gets a little bit interesting with what UnitQ does, is that here we have a really good engagement point, but then the question is, then like, what do you do with that? What do you do with all of that data that's starting to come in? So but that was kind of the like when we talk about in-app, you can see kind of how that becomes really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the big questions there is, let's say you're having a stability problem with your application. So golfers can't golf on your mobile app. And would you rather hear about that in real time, or would you rather hear about it hours later when thousands of more users have had a frustrating experience and have started posting about it on social media? And it's a rhetorical question. There's an obvious answer, which is that you want to hear about it in real time. You want to understand as soon as there's a problem in your application, whether it's an issue with stability, an issue with people being unable to reset their passwords, and you want to be able to drive action. So with UnitQ, we monitor feedback. We identify what the core issues are. and then we alert the right people to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if you're an engineer, ideally you're getting an alert. If you're support lead, you're getting a heads up that you're expecting an inflow of tickets. And with that information and the metadata that Helpshift is capturing, your team's actually prepared to get to the root of the problem and solve it before your customers decide, actually, I'm going to switch over to a hockey app instead.
Yeah. Well, and of course, that's what they'll do. It's kind of funny that you say that about that real time, getting that real time feedback. I actually call it shark hunting, because and the reason why is like if you monitor you monitor your feedback and incoming, like it'll most of the time it'll be this pretty stable, like this, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see this little spike that comes out of the water, and it's all of a sudden when you see that spike, then you're like, all right, something's changed, something's moved, something's happening. And that's when you want to jump. That's why I call it shark hunting, because when you see the trends, you'll see these little spikes, these little shark tails that are sticking out of the water. And you're like, wait a second, what's happened there? And the faster that you know about that, the faster you're able to react to that and do something, then you're able to hunt those sharks and get them down. And that's, of course, that's, and anyone who's ever monitored feedback, you'll see those sharks over time, where they just kind of looks like a flat water, and then all of a sudden there's this spike that comes up, and you're like, okay, let's go do that, go with that. So we've talked a lot about in-app. We've talked a little bit about kind of some of the actions. I do want to talk about some of the other channels that are out there. Because I think if you just look at in-app, or you look at whatever, it's you might be missing some of the story. And I think this is where UnitQ becomes interesting, because you are a multi-channel tool. So talk to me a little bit about the value of kind of having taking a look at multiple channels, especially when it comes to feedback.
Definitely. So different channels tell different stories. So when we look at what people talk about in app stores, as an example, it tends to be really serious issues or exceptional experiences. Get that sort of barbell between people that are really excited about your app and want everyone in the world to know, and you get those people that have had a really poor experience, and they're going to say that they had a bad experience, but they're probably not going to tell you all of the details you need to reproduce the problem they had. And so that's where support tickets really come in, with those specific details, as well as in-app surveys. When we look at the wild world of social, it's much more about how an application makes a user feel. So when you're looking at what people are posting on Facebook, like sometimes it's crazy things, they're crazy videos, or it's sort of that all caps, I've had a terrible experience, please help me. And the same thing's true with Twitter. So you need to be able to capture that sentiment, see how it's changing over time, because that's also going to impact your brand and the way that people view you in the market. Customers are very fickle in today's market because there are so many alternatives. So being able to quickly capture and respond to that feedback is often the difference between creating a lifelong customer and having to send a "we miss you" email to someone that you've lost.
Yeah. So which brings up an interesting question. If a consumer has an opportunity to do something publicly or privately, if you have an in-app option where they can provide feedback, or there's say public posting it on Twitter or Facebook, do you have a feel for what they might prefer to do, and when and how they might prefer to do that? Like, when might somebody prefer to go public versus just doing it in the app?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why people go public is because they weren't able to resolve it privately. In most cases, now there are of course edge cases and people that want to send off that quippy tweet about a brand not living up to expectations. But in most cases, people want really to have a better experience with an app. and they want to give companies the information that they need in order to deliver that better experience, which is what users have come to that application to expect. And the reason why they're giving feedback is because
Yeah.
an experience didn't meet their expectations. And so the first place that users would like to go based on what we've seen is in-app, if not that, providing some sort of survey feedback or other direct communication with a company. And when all else fails, that's largely
Yeah.
when they're going public.
Yeah. And I think that I think that makes, makes a lot of sense. They're gonna look there. And if they don't find it, then they'll get frustrated and they'll be like, okay, well, I guess I don't care, or or they'll go public, because they're, frustrated about it, or something. So, yeah, that's actually that's actually really interesting.
And
kind
there's
of what-
one other reason as well, which is if they feel like the company's not listening.
Yeah,
If they feel like even if they tell someone directly that company hasn't inspired confidence in its ability to drive action, that's when we see people going public as well, which is why
yeah,
when you look at the types of issues that people complain about most, and we've done studies of this, we looked at the top 5,000 applications throughout the last 12 months and what the most frequent issues were that people talked about on app stores. And
Yeah.
the top 3 issues are all performance issues: slow performance, app force closing, and being unable to install an application. And so when you have
Well-
those issues, sometimes you go public with them.
And that brings up a really interesting point that I've had these conversations before, and about talking to brands about like, hey, you know what, talked about in-app support, or even just putting up feedback. Like, even if you're like, well, look, we're not ready to do chat and in-app support, we're like, well, just put a feedback channel in there. Just put the FAQs, put the feedback in there, and as well, it's like, well, but if we put the feedback in here, that means we're opening up a channel, right? We're opening up a place where feedback will come in, and then we'll have to triage it, we'll have to deal with it, we'll have to respond to it, and it's going to take out of our roadmap, or or things like that.
Mhm.
And so there was this reluctancy of like, well, should we open up this floodgate, type of a thing, and it really kind of, when I heard that, I was like, look, it's not about opening up the flood. You're already getting that flood. You're already getting, they're going to go somewhere and they're going to give you that feedback. It's really more about how do you manage it and how do you control it. And that's what's really nice about having some of these tools, having the Helpshift in-app, with the bots and the automations that you can put around it so they can automatically collect. You can have the analytics so that you can actually see what your trends are and things like that. So you can actually deal with it and manage it versus it being just completely out of control and, kind of in the public space. Plus your consumers will feel like, hey, look, you're actually listening to them about it. So
Yeah, it's sort of like the tree falls in the forest, and no one's there to hear it. If a user is experiencing a problem, it's a problem. Even if you're not aware of that problem, it's still impacting your user's experience.
Yeah.
And that's at the core of whether your users enjoy your software, are willing to continue to do business with you, and whether they recommend that experience to people in their lives.
Yeah. Brett, let's talk a little bit about when do you collect feedback. Let's talk about the, kind of a little bit in the product, in the product life cycle, about that. I know, like when do you start seeing feedback actually coming in? And then I'll share kind of share what we're seeing there.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends a bit on industry. And as a product manager, just with my my day-to-day hat on, I think about this stuff a lot because I'm always looking for feedback from UnitQ's users And I try to get it as early as I can in the product life cycle. And that tends to be what we see with people is as soon as there's something to show, people are eager to get feedback from users.
Yeah.
And so whether it's a beta to a limited amount of users where, you know, people are using tags to identify which group in an A/B test a particular user falls in, as long as they have the tools in place to capture feedback at that point, they're able to incorporate that feedback into the development lifecycle, all the way through to launch, where a team is really looking for enhancements and trying to understand how the thing they launch performed. Is that consistent with what you've seen?
Yeah, I think, and I think that's it. You know, when there's, you know, we're kind of overlapping, you know, product support with feedback, and I want to just focus kind of on the feedback, because often product support is thought of as a, you know, like as a post-launch activity. You know, that you it's like after you launch, you know, you have the growth of your app, and you know, and then you have to think about, well, how do we support it? How do we handle this? But feedback is something that is interesting from the very, very, very beginning. You know, from the first day that you go out, and I'll give an example. Marvel Snap launched, you know, a couple of actually launched this week, which is a really fun. Again, as you can tell, I'm kind of a gaming guy, but Marvel Snap launched earlier this week. You know, a lot of fanfare, a lot of things like that. You could see it, a really fun game. But they've been in soft launch for you know, 6 months or over a year, and so during that soft launch, though, they've had their feedback channel open. And that's been super critical to have that open, because you know, you're able to capture all of that, you know, before you actually go out. You're able to find out, like, what are the problems, what are that. And in today's, you know, today's environment, and you know, especially around product, where, you know, a 2-week sprint is actually a very long time now. Like, I remember when we moved to 2-week sprints, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe 2 weeks. Now I'm just like, what are you talking about? 2-week sprint? I don't want to wait 2 weeks. I want to ship it out this afternoon, you know? And so having that channel and having that in there, especially during the early phases, you know, this last year, we actually released a feedback only SDK. It's absolutely free, and it was intended for this early life cycle. It was intended for, like, look, you're not really into support yet. You don't need to have all these bots or all these automations or 1,000 agents or whatever. In fact, you don't even need to, you know, you're just collecting the data right now. And so it has a set of FAQs so you can answer questions, and it has 3 already pre-created bots, which is part of it, which is, you know, rate my app, report a bug, and give me feedback. And that's it. And so you just drop that SDK in, so that from the day one, you have this in-app feedback that's going on. And then you're collecting. And then, of course, later on, as you want to expand and add support and things like that, you can, but it's already just kind of built in, you know, right from the first time you go out to beta or even alpha, or even when you give it to your internal QA testers, they could just use the feedback tools and just be like, oh, found a bug.
I really like that. And that also gives you the ability to differentiate experiences. So if someone's having a poor experience, the types of questions that you might want to ask them are going to be very different than if someone has an exceptional experience with your product. And you want to hold up those examples of what's going well. Like we've talked a lot about feedback as a negative. Here are the things that you need to improve. But it's also really important to hold up feedback that's positive to understand what those things are that you need to double down on, what you need to continue to build into your product. What are the things that give people that spark of joy that are the reason they're going to keep on coming back to play your game, to experience your service, to try your software again and again?
All right, we've been getting a few questions. One of the things that's coming is, how do you it's now this is about categorizing. How do you categorize your feedback or sort the feedback that comes in? Because I think it's like, all right, you get a lot of feedback, but that was one of the questions that was being asked.
Sure. this is, I mean, this is very much at the core of what UnitQ does. So do you mind if I take over the screen share for a second? I can just show a quick
not at all.
example. So at UnitQ, we use a applied machine learning approach to categorize feedback into as specific detail as possible. So we provide high level aggregation, so something like there's a problem with your application, but then we get much deeper. So the goal is to categorize every piece of user friction that is identified from your user feedback in as much detail as possible. So for a particular application, we don't just want to know that someone's having a particular problem with your app. We want to know that there's a forced closure, or that with a music streaming app, people are unable to choose music. And then once they drill in, we want to be able to understand what the specific pieces of feedback are from a platform like Helpshift that are informing that categorization, how they're trending over time, where they're concentrated globally, and what platforms they're occurring on. So for us, it's really important that you're able to categorize feedback in a systematic way and in a relatively exhaustive way, so that if someone stops you in the elevator and says, what are the top 10 reasons why you're receiving 1-star ratings, you have the answer at your fingertips to say it's that people aren't able to add music to playlists. It's a specific iOS problem. It's only impacting our most recent version, and we have a path to fix it right away.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and you know, and that underscores the importance of having the kind of the in-app SDK, because then you get that additional data on top of that when you're able to categorize that. So
totally, and with a platform like Helpshift, you can also create some form around the types of things that you're asking users, so that you can start to understand what part of the platform is affected, what's the specific problem they're experiencing, so that you can create more structure inherent in the way that you're assessing those results.
Everyone always talks about ROI, you know, what's the outcome? And so, you know, I've talked about kind of in-app, but what are the specific outcomes that you are expecting when you see people actually act on this feedback?
That's a great question, and it's really upstream of so many key metrics that people care about. So I'm just going to call out 3 things that improving your ability to react to product feedback can meaningfully change. And these are things we've seen in the customers that we've worked with. The first one is, of course, retention. When users leave your product, they're typically leaving for a reason. Something didn't meet their needs. It wasn't what they expected. They haven't been able to get the experience that they wanted. Maybe it's because something's too expensive. Maybe it's because something doesn't work consistently. When you can identify those pain points and fix them, your users are going to stay with you for longer. And we've seen that with churn reductions of up to 50% with people using UnitQ to assess and identify opportunities for improvement. The second one I want to call out is the virality of your business. And this is particularly important with many of the types of businesses that rely on in-app feedback and that work with Helpshift, is whether you're going to have an experience that's going to be positive enough for you to want to share it. When an app prompts you to, you know, get bonus points for sharing an app with friends, the first question most users ask themselves is this something I actually want to share? Is this something that's worth sharing? And an exceptional experience is going to make people really excited to share that experience. And then the third thing is just around the cost to your business and your support team of managing that user feedback. So when you're effectively cutting off these problems, those are less tickets for your support team, the ability to stop manual work, identifying what the key problems are, shifting to an automated way, and saving costs to your business.
Yeah. You know, we've done some surveys ourselves. It's interesting when when people move from, say, email feedback or things like this, we've actually seen that there's been a 3x increase in engagement by having just an in-app engagement tool
That's
versus
awesome.
any other tool. Yeah. It's just because it's just so easy for them to do that. And typically your typical metrics like CSAT or whatever will go up. We've seen a 20 to 30% increase just by moving
Mhm.
to an in-app experience, because it's just so easy. So, well, all right, it's been great, Brett, having this discussion with you. Is there any? I'm just looking real quick to see if there's any other questions that we might have missed. Is there? And I know I've been asking you a number of questions. Was there anything that you wanted to also ask of me on this?
Yeah, I'd love to understand, when looking at HelpShift's user base, what are the big problems that you find that the companies you work with are trying to solve by understanding user feedback? What are
Yeah.
the biggest themes of user friction that you see pop up again and again?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the biggest things, of course, is just having that, especially during these early phases, the quality control, making sure that, hey, look, we are absolutely ready to ship. When a game launches or when an app launches or whatever, you're sitting there and you're really kind of nervous about, like, well, what's going to happen on day one. And we'll see brands that go from 20 issues a day to 50 issues a day to 1,000 issues a day to 10,000 issues a day to 20,000 issues a day. Like this week, we've had brands that have gone, literally from hundreds of thousands, to tens of thousands of issues. And what we see is that when they have this feedback, they're totally ready for it, because they understand. They're like, okay, we know what's going to happen. We know, we've seen what the questions are. We know what the things are. We've either addressed them in the product or we've addressed them here. That's so much better than going out and being like, okay, well, let's just throw, 10,000 people at it. They know beforehand because they've had this channel open. They've been able to handle it. And so the scale of a launch just becomes kind of second nature. They're just like, yeah, all right, we're ready for it. Let's go. Which is exactly what
totally.
you want. Yeah.
Teams want to de-risk at every opportunity possible.
Yeah.
And feedback is a great way to do that, to understand in advance of things going out to the public, what are the big issues that you need to track closely, so that when you push your baby out into the world, you know where all the potential pain points are, and what you're left with is excitement from your user base, virality for your business, and a really exceptional experience that people are going to love.
Great. Well, let's leave with a couple of call to actions. It's been great just really having this discussion with you. First off, I do want everyone to know that that we do have, this is the Feedback SDK, that I don't know if you just brought that up, but we can bring that up again. But we do have the Feedback SDK, which is it's a free SDK that you can download. It's intended to be free. It doesn't even have a time frame on it, because it's intended to allow you to get your FAQs, the questions out there, and to capture feedback really early on in your development cycle. And so anybody who has a mobile app, it's really like, you should just get this and integrate it. And then as your app grows, as it expands, you can add other functionality like the chat or the support or the things like that to it. But you have a feedback in-app feedback channel that's going. And so that's my call to action. Brett, I'll let you give a call to action on UnitQ.
Sure. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to understand what the problems are that you're trying to understand from your user feedback. And if you'd love to learn more, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, or go to unitq.com, UNITQ.com, and click the link to learn more.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Some really good questions. It's been a great discussion, and have a great day.
Talk soon, everyone.
See ya.